Y'all seem to like the healthy eating vibe from the last episode, so we're gonna keep that same thing going. We're gonna keep that same energy. On this episode, we're gonna be talking about what's better, fresh or frozen salmon. What y'all cooking out there? We cooking some salmon today. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, with all due respect, it's your boy B Season on IG, BK, aka Chef Boyar, BK, aka that boy that be cooking it right. And we always keep it in 100%.
The player way.
And what we're going to be doing is we've been talking about healthy eating. We started off the first week of our show talking about a lot of like Southern traditional cooking. And then in the second week, we've gotten more into the healthier cooking options, easier cooking options for people working during the week, and meal prep options. So today we're going to be talking about frozen versus fresh salmon and preparation. Traditionally, people prepare salmon in some very limited ways that may not make it as delicious as it potentially can be. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can make it more gourmet versus how people traditionally, and kind of critiquing what people usually do, even down to the sourcing of their protein. Hey, bruh, respect that protein. We're absolutely going to be talking about how to source that protein in a way that leaves you some absolutely delicious results. And of course, as always, we got all the exclusives.
Exclusive.
The player way.
Exclusive.
To make sure you're cooking it right. Absolutely. That's how we do it here. So let's go ahead and get the window started, get the graphic down, and let's pop this guy over here. Absolutely. And let's see what they're working with out here. So this video is called How to Cook Frozen Salmon. I've only seen the beginning of it, but I thought it was a great video to use as an example of how I used to cook salmon when I first started out versus what I learned over time. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this as an example. I think a lot of y'all probably cook it this way too, or at least have in the past. So here we go. Real basic kind of setup that he's got going on here. So he's just got some basic frozen salmon that he got, from the frozen food section, Members Mark. So, a lot of people buy their when they first start out cooking and they don't know much about what to do. This is kind of how they source their protein. It's from the frozen food section, which is not a bad way to source your protein. It's just not
the player way.
That's the best way I can say it. I just got to improv that. Like, it's just not the player way to do it. It's a very inexpensive way to get a lot of protein all at one time. It's a great way if you don't have a whole lot of people to entertain for, or actually it can be either or. Like if you're a person who just likes to buy it, freeze it, forget about it, and you're not going to be cooking it immediately, that's definitely the way to go. You could also buy fresh salmon and freeze it. But I typically, when I go grocery shopping, if I source fish, that's typically what I'm going to cook first. All right, so now he's doing something that you absolutely don't want to do. So I'm going to bring up a pro tip on this situation. So he's got some country crock in here. And when I was growing up, this was butter to me. But in truth, if you are using country crock and you call that butter, you are absolutely not cooking it right. If you bring me a tub of Crunchy Crock and say I put butter on my salmon, hell no, absolutely not. Oh no, I'm gonna tell you. Get out of here. Shout out to Rachel. When she first met me, I used to think Country Crock was butter too, because in the hood, that's the good butter. Country Crock is the good butter, man. But it's not butter, it's margarine. So he's already messing up. I mean, you can use margarine. I personally just have a thing about margarine. It's not the best thing for you. I would much rather either use some olive oil in this particular preparation. He is seasoning his food. Now, that's absolutely the money tip right there. You gotta season your meat now. I would have rather him defrosted this first, because if he defrosts it, you got to remember, meat is, and while he's covering this up, let's pause this for a second. You got to remember that meat is a muscle, okay? it's flesh, it's a muscle. So you gotta really relegate and really understand that and put that in your mind, because muscle has a behavior just like it does inside your body when you're alive and blood is pumping through it. So when you cook a protein, it has certain behaviors that like vegetables may or may not have. So to get flavor into the muscle, into the meat itself, you want it to be defrosted. And not only that, but if you defrost the meat and get it closer to room temperature, you're going to have a much better shot at cooking it evenly and not drying it out. So when you put something frozen, like let's say you're frying chicken and you put frozen solid rock hard chicken in some flour, first and foremost, it's going to be hard for that flour to stick to it when it's hard. Yes, you can dip it in some water to soften it out the outside, but a supple defrosted piece of protein is going to behave a whole lot better in terms of you marinating it, in terms of you covering it, coating it, seasoning it, all of those things, because you got a much better shot at whatever seasoning you're using, whatever you're applying to it, whatever process you're doing to it before in meal prep. You got a chance of it actually penetrating that protein. So I just, as a rule, this is a pro tip as well, another exclusive.
Exclusive.
The player way.
Exclusive.
The first step in how to cook frozen salmon is to defrost it. Put it in, take the Ziploc bags, put it in some cool water, not hot water. Don't ever defrost in hot water, because what you're going to do is you're going to slowly start like a sous vide process, if you will, where you're slowly boiling the outside of that protein, and you got a good chance at spoiling it, especially if you're going to leave it out for hours. So definitely let it naturally defrost. Set it out on the counter for a little bit. But if you need to go real fast with it, you can put it in a sanitary bowl of cool water and let it come down to temperature that way. And then the best way, the absolute best way to defrost is just put it in the refrigerator. You're going to notice something that, if you really want, you're cooking it right. If you want to be cooking it right, you want to make sure that you're never rushing when it comes to cooking time. I'm often a type of person that if I've learned the best way to if you're cooking, to make sure that it tastes really good, that it comes out supple, that it comes out juicy, comes out delicious, well seasoned, and you definitely want people to eat your food and say, you're cooking it right, then you cannot be rushing your food, okay? So cooking something from a frozen state is absolutely the best way to get somebody to be eating your food, and it's all super dry on the outside and not cooked on the inside, because the frozen stuff on the inside took forever to cook. It's absolutely the way for somebody to eat your food and just be like, hell no, when they leave your house. You know what I'm saying? So don't do yourself like that. Give yourself some time. Really make sure you give yourself the absolute best and set yourself up for success, not for failure, because then when they eat your food, they'll be telling you,
you are watching a master at work.
Absolutely. They'll make you think that you are a master chef. So take your time, man. Defrost your meat, or just buy fresh protein, and then you won't have to worry about that altogether. Another thing about buying fresh protein, another exclusive.
Exclusive.
The player way.
Exclusive.
If you buy fresh protein, you also have the opportunity to get a whole piece of the protein. If you notice, if we go back to his salmon, the best part of the salmon to me is the part that he does not have here. When you look at him opening up the protein, this is a very sanitary piece of fish. Okay, so he does have some skin on there. Then this makes it even worse. Okay, so another reason why you want to defrost this is he's got that skin on the other side of the fish. It's got like a scaly, it's been descaled, but it's kind of got like a skin. I don't want to call it silver skin, because silver skin is something, a completely different type of tendon with mammals. But it's got like a silvery skin to it, like where the scales have been kind of scraped off. That's the best part of the salmon, in my opinion, because salmon skin tastes amazing. So when you pan sear it, you can really take care of that. If you cook it like this in the oven, that's not gonna crisp up. It's gonna get super soggy and gummy, and it's not gonna nearly treat that salmon skin the way it deserves to be treated. So another tip is I don't cook my salmon in the oven. I pan sear, and it doesn't mean that I put a whole lot of oil. You can, but salmon is a naturally buttery, fatty fish. So it's in nature, this salmon skin. A lot of people call salmon skin, once it's crisped up the right way, the bacon of the sea, because a salmon skin is nice and crispy. It's fatty. It does have like a bacony taste, albeit a little fishy. So the meat of the salmon as well is very buttery and fatty, very delicious fish. So it's one of those things that you don't have to use a ton of oil to pan sear some salmon and get it to do what you need it to do. A little bit of butter in there, and a little bit of olive oil to raise the smoke point on the butter so it does not burn. And you're on your way to some really good salmon. So I would say my next pro tip would say, pan sear instead of putting it in the oven, so that that skin that you see there can be taken care of. But again, we started off this tip talking about buying it fresh as opposed to frozen. A lot of times when you buy it frozen, especially like Gordon's fish, you're not going to get the salmon skin on there because a lot of people take it off because it's very sanitary. So another good reason to buy fresh is you're always going to have, it can still be filleted just like you want to do, so you don't have to worry about the bones, but you'll get some better salmon skin in that particular situation. And once you get a taste for salmon skin, you're going to love it. So he's got a little timer there, and he's going to be cooking that in the oven for a period of time. Hopefully he can fast forward through this, so we don't have to see ding, dong, dong, ding, dong, dong, ding, dong, ding, ding. Okay, so he's got some broccoli. He's boiling on the side. We don't really care about that. We're going to go right to salmon. Ooh, no. Oh, no. Hold on. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Oh, no. Oh, no. Bro, look at that.
Hell no.
Oh, no. So, okay, so here's what we got going on here. If you don't know, he's ruined the salmon. He may be able to eat it and like it, but he's learning to eat terribly cooked salmon. So what he's got going on here is, see all this white stuff on the outside? This is all of the fat in that's inside of that fish. How you know you've overcooked salmon is when this white stuff is on the surface of the fish. When that fat comes to the surface and cooks outside that fish like that. But he's gone beyond that. It's gone beyond just kind of being, when you overcook it slightly, it's just kind of like lines on the surface of the fish. And that's like an undesirable cook. If you do that in like a professional chef environment, a professional kitchen, they're going to say, send it back. But he's got it white all on the outside here. So he has completely overcooked this fish. And the reason why he overcooked the fish is because, here's the exclusive.
Exclusive.
The player way.
Exclusive.
He did not defrost that fish before he started cooking. If you defrost that fish before you start cooking, it's going to cook more evenly, and you're not going to have to keep it in the oven for very long. I didn't listen to how long he cooked it, but he cooked this way too long. This is not beef. This is not turkey. It don't take long. And in fact, even beef, salmon, most fish and pork don't take long to cook unless you got a big hunk of pork, of like pork. Like if you got like pork tenderloin or something like that, or if you got like a chuck roast or pot roast or something like that, yeah, those things are going to take longer to cook because it's by the pound. But I'm talking about a single piece of protein. Poultry typically takes the longest to cook because you have to cook it all the way through, so that you don't get any salmonella or anything like that. Pork cooks fast. a piece of beef, you don't even have to cook all the way. Like, you have to cook it, but it doesn't have to be well done to be able to be prepared. So same thing with salmon. And salmon doesn't necessarily have to be 100% well done in order to be a delicious piece of salmon ready to go. You can undercook it slightly and it'll still be good. So he's way overcooked this to the point where fish is somewhat forgiving to people who overcook it. So it's still edible. If you had cooked beef to this extent, it would be inedible. It would be like, I can't even taste it. I can't even eat it. It's like shoe leather. This is the equivalent of like shoe leather salmon. So he absolutely did not cook that right.
Hell no!
That ain't how you do it at all. He's got to really work on this thing big time because oh man, you hate to see it, bro. You hate to see it. Oh, man, let's keep on watching. He's got his seasonings just kind of clump on there on the top. See how I was telling you, if you don't cook that all the way through, it's just clumped on top. It's possible that this is just a video. I'm not listening to audio, but it's possible he's saying that this is like not how you do it. Just the way he's kind of picking over it. And he could be saying that it needs to be a little bit more time, but see how seasoning it just sat on top because it wasn't defrosted. If you defrost your protein, you can really rub that all over in there and it can really get in there. All that fat on top is not good. He just overcooked it. That white stuff that kind of comes to the surface. That's overcooked salmon. He's turning the skin over there. The skin is super gummy. So that's, you can pull it off like that, but when you pan sear it, you could really sear it really well, pull it off, seal the other side, and then you can get kind of like some sea bacon. So all in all, what you've learned from watching this guy's example is how you don't want to cook your salmon. You really want to stay away from cooking your protein from a raw state in a frozen block. You want to cook it in a raw state from room temperature where it's soft and supple so that you have the opportunity to get some marination and some dry brining or wet brining into that situation. So definitely not the way to do this when you cook as far as that. Again, pan searing would keep you from just putting it in the oven and forgetting about it and leaving it. You can watch it. It doesn't take long to cook a piece of salmon. A piece of salmon of that individual block size, just one of those little pieces, if you cook it fresh, it's not going to take you more than about 5 to 7 minutes to pan sear. So that's quick. He put that thing in the oven for a hot minute. So I'm kind of sad, man. He's got me real somber in this particular situation because when he took that thing out of there, I'm completely like, oh, man. Whew. So all in all, here's what we're rocking with as we start to wrap up this episode. Man, you hate to see that, man. You can tell I'm so depressed watching that. Like that he really overcooked that fish. So if you're gonna cook it in the oven, bring it down to room temperature, let it defrost. Never cook frozen protein like that. That's like trying to cook a frozen turkey or something like that. It's not gonna work. And if it does work, you're gonna overcook it, and it's not gonna be tasting good. So if you're gonna put it in the oven, get that salmon skin off of there pretty early. I would say still, if you want to cook in the oven and save yourself a little bit of calories, at least pan sear the bottom part where that salmon skin. So imagine this side of my hand is the salmon skin, and this is the upside. Go ahead and pan sear that salmon skin just like that for a couple minutes in some hot, or a little bit of hot oil, a little bit of hot butter, and then take it off. And then you can slowly but surely take you kind of like a rubber spatula scraper and ease off that salmon skin off of there. Then put it in the oven. Why that's a great thing to do if you're trying to lose weight and you want to cook it in the oven, because dry heat cooking is going to be healthier than lubricated cooking or like with oil. So I'm going to say that again. Dry heat, like cooking on like a grill or cooking in a broiler or cooking in the oven is always healthier than like pan searing, pan frying, or what I call the lubricated method because you're using oil for the transference of heat. So what I mean by that is dry heat does not need any oil in order to cook, like in an air fryer. Now, an air fryer, you'll sometimes like spray a little bit of oil, but far less oil than you need to pan sear. But you can also pan sear with just a little bit of oil too. It just has different results. So in that particular case, what you want to be wary of is you still want to give the correct amount of preparation so it turns out great. So pan searing the underside with the skin is going to allow, there's like a very thin membrane of fat that connects that skin to the underside of that muscle of that fillet of that fish. So when you apply the heat to just that underside where that skin is, it's going to dissolve that membrane of fat and make it a lot easier for you to take that same skin off. Therefore, the only part of the fish that's really been put in the oil is that fatty skin. So the underside, once you take the skin off, it's relatively fat-free, a little bit of residual fat, but not much. Then you can put that in the oven, put your seasonings on both sides, apply whatever lubrication, if any, to the pan so it doesn't stick, or you can use parchment paper so that it doesn't stick at all. Use a dry heat, and then you can put your lemon or whatever you want to do and cook it with that. Put your seasoning. The season I recommend for fish is always Old Bay seasoning. It gives a nice mild but yet Cajun spice flavor. It's really good to put on fish. So Old Bay is what I would put on that. Remember, salt is not seasoning. Seasoning is not salt. So use a seasoned salt so that you can definitely make sure
You're cooking it right.
Absolutely. So you got that going. Once you cook that thing, it's not going to take a ton of time. Take it out of the oven. Serve it with your best accoutrement, red beans, rice, broccoli, whatever you have. Even if you want to put you with some mashed potatoes and gravy, don't be lazy. Just make sure you're doing it.
The player way.
And we're going to get on up out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between, with all due respect, I've been your boy BK. You hate to see people overcook their salmon like that. Don't be that type of dude. Make sure you're cooking it right, and make sure you are watching every episode of